It's the 4th of December 2018 and we're seated here in the pavilion at Chesterfield Cricket Club, Queen's Park, Chesterfield. And I'm joined by two fairly recent players, very recent players at Chesterfield Cricket Club. I'm pleased to say current, who are going to talk to us about their experiences playing on this lovely ground and elsewhere. Perhaps, guys, you could introduce yourselves first of all. So let's start with yourself.
Brian Gladwin. Played for Chesterfield now since 1977. I joined when I was 11 years of age.
Oh wow! Yeah.
And just past the 50 mark now. So
brilliant.
Still playing.
Long service medal due.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alongside my fellow colleague.
Just past 50. Bit of licence.
Yeah.
Tim Kirk, been playing at Chesterfield since early 80s. Senior cricket, I think, since about the mid-80s. So transitioned between Andy Bowers, played quite a bit with Harry Cartwright, Dean Hopkinson and quite a few others in sort of the mid to late 80s, and then several more through the 90s and onwards.
Great, okay. And any particular specialism? Do you?
Used to be opening bowler, back middle order, bowl, off spin I think it's called now, isn't it? Filth, yeah. So kind of lengthened my career by doing that over the last, whatever it is, 15 years or thereabouts now. And gradually slipped out of the first team into the seconds and just about ready to retire, I think, now.
Hands on the bat, right.
Yeah.
And Brian, what's yours?
Well, allegedly off-spin bowling. I started as a seamer back in the day, and Jim Brailsford quite quickly got hold of me and realised that there was no future in that for me, given that I was knee-high to a grasshopper at the time, and asked me if I'd thought about bowling off-spin. So I decided to give it a go. And
You're still thinking about it, aren't you?
Yeah. Just your apprenticeship.
Never look back. Bat, lower middle order, occasionally in at the top, just dependent on the game situation.
Yeah, that's great. And obviously, you know, you're sort of coming, in your case, Tim, twilight of your playing career, shall we say?
I think the pair of us are.
Yeah. Well, Brian hasn't admitted it yet. But I just think, you know, if looking back, was there a period in your playing time that you could reflect on as feeling it was a good period for you, the standout games?
Yeah, I think mid to late 90s we had a good run in the Cup. We won the Tomlins Trophy twice in about 3 or 4 years. Harry and Dean both in that side as well. And we beat the same team in the final, I think, on both occasions. We beat Steatley. But the fact that we got there was because we've got a strong team. Majority of us played together throughout the summer, so it was the same sort of 11, 12, 13 players. But we got 5 or maybe 6 good quality bowlers in there as well, which you obviously need in a cup game. So 3 good seamers, 2 good spinners, and then Dean, who I'm not quite sure what Dean did, but he was there as a backup as well. And yes, we could always get runs on the board, but we could always defend a score as well. And I think that's what served us well by winning the Tomlin Trophy.
Well, there was a good mix, wasn't there? There was a good mix of experience and youth in the side. And I think that helped, you know, in a pressure situation. You know, you got the level heads of Harry, I won't say Dean, but you know, trying to just keep people on straight and narrow, and then the younger brigade, the open thrusters, trying to get us over the line.
I think in that cup run though, I think it was the second time we won it. We played a semi-final at Retford, which I'm sure you'll remember. We were defending runs. It wasn't a particularly high scoring game, 180, I think 190, something like that. And they were going quite well. They needed something like about 20 off 2 overs though. We managed to peg them back a little bit, 6 or 7 wickets down. And I was bowling the final over, Dean was bowling the penultimate over. I said, Dean, just give me 10 or 12 to bowl at, you know, I'll be fine. Anyway, I got 4 to bowl at in the last over. Bobby Chapman hit Dean over the pavilion at Retford a couple of times in that over, I think. So it didn't leave me much to... Anyway, somehow we managed to get through. And we won by a run or 2 runs, I think. So, and that was almost a cup final for us, I think, because of the way that, you know, we sort of the game had ebbed and flowed, but we come out as victors on that day.
And I think we've built up over the years quite a strong rivalry with Retford.
Yeah.
There were some characters in their side, some characters in our side, and that sort of helped build that atmosphere during the game.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
And do you remember the journey home?
Yes. It didn't take too long to get home.
Yeah.
Pit stop on the way.
Yeah, to Rhodes Arms. Yeah, we had a couple of beers in there. Didn't we?
Yeah. Odd one or two.
Yeah.
And
You got banned. Yeah, you
made
were banned
the
from
rest
there,
of
weren't
it,
you?
mate,
That's
and-
right. Yeah.
Oh, right, yeah, just a fairly normal day then.
Yeah,
really, isn't it?
just an average Sunday night.
Yeah.
It was near my birthday. I seem to be.
Yeah, it probably was. Yeah.
I think it's always helps when you've got a rivalry going in the league.
It helps if it's not in the same team.
But yes. But I think one of the things that comes across to me is you're very much a team that seems to play well together, and that's part of the secret of the success. Because some teams we've talked to, it's often sometimes it's circumstances, teams break up, people move on, and so on. But you seem to have stayed together pretty solidly.
I think back then, I say back then, it makes it sound ancient, but these days the side isn't a settled side, whereas when we played, you pretty much would 12 or 13 players, barring injury, you would have the same nucleus week in, week out. You wouldn't chop and change, so you knew what you were doing, you knew what your game plan was, you knew what your strengths were, and you tended to play to it.
I think we're all of a similar age as well, weren't we?
Yeah.
With a couple of exceptions, but the majority of us were sort of moving through our 20s or early 30s together, and for whatever reason it seemed to gel. Plus one or two pros coming and going over the years as well, particularly one in the 80s that quite a few people will remember, and I'm sure Bride, as Delroy Morgan, who Michael Holding brought over. Probably one of the best that we've had as an overseas batsman, absolutely incredible. And bowler, and fielder.
Great slip fielder.
Just and a top guy as well.
Yeah, lovely guy.
So I think over the years we've been lucky with some of the pros. When we used to play in the old Bassett Law League, however, we'd try and get a Derbyshire pro, but they'd be sort of in and out, such as Tim O'Gorman, because he was making his way in the first team.
Sure.
Frankie Griffiths.
Yeah, Frank Griffiths, but we'd never get any favours obviously from Notts, although we're playing a Notts affiliated league, but why would Notts allow a Notts player to come and play for a Derbyshire club? So we're always kind of, betwixt and between, but somehow I think we did okay.
And Tim, you were saying you second 11 now. I mean, just thing you mentioned as well earlier about younger players coming through. Have you got a particularly strong ethic around that? Do you get?
Yeah, I think there always has been at the club. We've always had a very strong junior setup. I should know how many junior teams. It's maybe 5 or 6. From the real tots all the way up to under 17s and 19s now. And I think we do a pretty good job of keeping those players as well, giving them opportunities. In the thirds, through to the seconds, and through to the first team. So I think it's always been a good breeding ground. And just to sort of add some kind of credence to that, this year the second team won the league in the Derbyshire League 4 North, and they went the whole season undefeated. And as far as I'm aware, a Chesterfield side's never done that before. So Brian and I were part of that side. Not saying that we had a great deal to do with it, but still very proud that a Chesterfield side's managed to achieve that.
That's great.
Yeah.
And who knows what players of the future you bring?
Yeah. Certainly some very good ones. Some have had the chance in the first team already, and have, they've made their way and will keep the place now. Others will get the chance in the next few years.
Sure. So do you think the grassroots of the game is healthy in this area?
I think it is at our club. I think as you look further afield, clubs are disappearing down to 2 teams, 1 team.
Yeah. Clubs
are merging. A friend of mine sent me an article just recently about in the Notts area, 50 clubs have disappeared, I think, in the last 10 years. So something needs to happen in terms of trying to encourage youngsters to play and keeping them playing, because they might drift off and do other things, but we're not even getting them at grassroots level to start with. So something needs to change there.
I think there's a few clubs that seem to be fairly strong with the junior setup, that attract the players, and then the other clubs not so much, which is not necessarily really healthy to have an abundance of players at one club or 2 or 3 clubs, because you can't give them all a game. So then they tend to drift off. So you've got to try and give them that opportunity.
I suppose what's in my mind is how do players of the future learn from guys like you? You know, because it's that constantly refreshing.
Learn when to pack in.
When to retire.
When to stop off.
I think both Brian and I are of a similar opinion, you know, that we don't want to stop any juniors from playing. And I've said the last however many years, pick the juniors first, and then if there's a place, I'll play. But don't leave the juniors at home. Brian, on the other hand, will play on crutches in a wheelchair.
Yeah, probably right. Drag me out kicking and screaming.
But he's done a fairly good job over the years. Go on, Brian. How many wickets? How many Premier League wickets?
So we need to know.
Over 600. So enough.
Pretty impressive. Yeah. I mean, is that a record for the club?
It's a league record at the moment. I'm sure it'll get beaten at some point in time, but at the moment it's a league record.
It's
so
a nice one to sit.
It was a good point to take a step back and look to bring on some of the juniors in the second team, only to find them actually they've already moved on and gone up to the first team. So
your 600th wicket, was that a notable batsman? Do you remember?
No, I can't remember.
Can you remember who it was?
No, I can't remember who it was.
Who was it? Steve Stubbins, was it?
Yeah.
Former Derbyshire.
Didn't like to say anything.
Yeah.
Cheers, Stubbo. Thanks very much.
Yes.
Didn't celebrate it at all.
No, I'm sure you didn't. No.
Didn't remind him of it in the bar either.
Yeah. But a good scalp to get. Yeah, that's a good one. And what about you, Tim? Have you got any particular notable games where you can remember a personal experience, personal performance?
Ian O'Brien broke my off stump on here a few years ago, about 10 years ago, and he was playing for. I forget who he was playing for then. Was it South Wingfield? Yeah. Played there. It was obviously he could get a bus through it, and the off stump was in 2 pieces not long afterwards. So not a great day for me, but had a few fifers over the years on here. But I think listening to what was said earlier about when we play here, we become a little bit complacent because of we're here every other week and we train here. When other teams come here, it's like their cup final. Because if they get rained off, that's it for another year. They're not going to be back here again until this time next year. So they all tend to raise their game, and we sometimes become a little bit complacent. And I always say when I was skipper, remember that these guys only come here once a year. It's the best ground probably that they'll play on this year. So they're all going to raise their game. They're not going to give the wicket away too easily, and the bowlers are going to be bowling as best as they can. So I think that might be another thing as well, that we said it's sometimes a bowler's graveyard on here, or it used to be. With that in mind, everybody does sort of value the wicket a little bit more.
Yeah, the ball never used to last very long. Once Doxy Walker, the groundsman, had his hands on the wicket.
No.
5 or 6 overs, and you were struggling to get anything like any shine on the ball. So it was hard work for the bowlers. As Andy's only 53, so
a youngster. What's the support for the club like round here? I mean, do you get a nucleus of a crowd on it?
Definitely a nucleus of people that come down week in, week out. And it'd be nice to attract more on a more regular basis, but because it's a park, people tend to drift through the park, sit and stop, watch the game of cricket, and then move on again. So it's sometimes hard to actually sit and understand who comes on a regular basis. The ones that do come on a regular basis tend to congregate around the pavilion.
So I suppose I was just thinking that I've lived in Chesterfield about 15 years now. It's hard sometimes for people to get an opinion about what people might think of Chesterfield Cricket Club. It's not. It seems in many ways more successful than the football team, I suggest. And yet you don't get the kind of exposure or acknowledgement.
I think at one point in time, the view was it was quite a closed group club, that you have to be asked to come and join the club. It's never been the case. Certainly not as long as I've been playing here, and that's a long time. It's always been a very welcome, friendly, family-run club that wanted to be successful on the pitch, but do it in the right way most of the time.
That's good. What about women's cricket? Have you ventured into?
I've never played it myself.
You've tried, haven't you?
I wonder if you wanted to.
There's a junior girls team here. And they're starting to make inroads now, and again trying to get the word out. So I think they've played a few games this year, but some of the junior girls that are playing here are already stepping up to sort of district level and county level, which is great for them. But I would suggest that there still needs to be more inclusion. There needs, the word needs to get out to more and more, whether it's through the schools or clubs doing their bit or ECB doing their bit. I don't know.
We've got one or two representing the Derbyshire younger ladies set up, and certain Ben Slater's sister, I think he managed to achieve that when she was playing as well, before she found work got too much for her on a Saturday.
Yeah. So lots going on. Are there any particular, you as you're coming to reflecting on the past and so on, are there things you'd like to see the club get more into? You mentioned about trying to generate more interest with young players.
I think there's that, but also keeping the profile of Chesterfield as high as possible, making sure the county are here. We get the festival, we get the T20 games. When Yorkshire play here, there's 5,000 or 6,000 people in the park, which is great. We earn a few quid behind the bar.
It's hard work for the club.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and again, we're grateful to all the volunteers at the club that help out. But without keeping those games and making sure we get the high-profile games, we've had some of the ladies' international warm-up games here, and some of the England under-19s. I think MCC played Sri Lanka here in 2002, 3, something like that. So people like Strauss, Harmison, Kevin Dean played in it. I'm not sure if Jones played it, I can't remember now, but against the full Sri Lankan side. So that was a real, sort of high point, getting the touring team here to play MCC, not just against Derbyshire, because we don't get the touring teams here to play Derbyshire anymore, as we used to. So anything we can do to keep the profile as high as possible has got to be good for the club.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's funny when you said that, I can remember Adam Gilchrist getting 100 here in the 96 Australia A game.
All right.
And there was Ponting playing. As well, and quite famous. And you think it'd be great to get that kind of, regular exposure, because that brought the crowds in.
There's no better sight on a warm sunny day than a full Queen's Park. The game of cricket going on.
Laura scored 100 on here for Warwickshire. Dev running in at one end, and I think Corky from the other end, maybe.
Going around the park.
Yeah. So
great days. And I think the. People always talk with a great deal of affection about watching cricket at Chesterfield, and we want that to sort of continue in loads of different ways.
I think it'd be nice to see, current members, both playing and social, and up and coming potential cricketers, staying at the club for as long as Tim and myself have been here, because you live, eat and breathe the club, and it's important. At the end of the day, you're proud to have been associated with it, and the players that you've already spoken to at the club, and the people that help keep the club running.
Sure. Great tradition, and one we hope continues. Thanks so much, guys, for sharing you.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you.